Okay, so yeah, who you are, what your name is, like where you live, how many kids you have, just as an introduction first.
Yeah, my name's Amber Jackson. I'm a single mom in Mesa, Arizona. I have four kids, 13, 8, 4, and 3.
And it's probably not snowing there like it is here.
Oh, for us, it's a very, very cold 55 degrees. So,
It's so cold here right now. Okay, so you have had quite the past few years.
yeah.
So tell me what has happened in your life.
Yeah, so I usually start my story. I feel like where I really had to dig in my heels and find that spot was I got married very soon out of high school. He returned from his mission right around the time I graduated high school. So we got engaged like 2 months out of when I was out of high school and married right after. And then when we had our first son 2 years later, that I feel like was my first moment. It was kind of when I realized, like, oh, I'm an adult now and adult problems are happening. It was when we found out at birth that he was born with Down syndrome.
Oh, not till you're
We
born.
no, we didn't know till he was born.
I went
We
vacation.
did not do any of the tests. We thought like, what are the chances? And it's just not going to happen to us. And so I like really spiraled into a deep postpartum depression and anxiety. And a lot of it could have just been, like chemical, like just baby depression that women go through. I don't know if it was diagnosis or not, like if I was feeling depressed because of his diagnosis, but I think that was the first time that I really was just like, all right, life out of high school is hard,
Like, yeah, you had to adult really quickly.
I had two adults. And then he's incredible though. He's my oldest. He's 13. And then we had a second child 4 years later. So we were married 6 years. And when our boys were 4 and 4 months old, is when we ended up separating and we got divorced, which was a shock to me. He just
Yeah, can you go into that? Like what happened?
yeah, he just decided that he wanted to live his life differently than how we had been living our life together. And he said, I love you. I think you are incredible. You're my best friend. I'm just not attracted to the kind of woman that you are. And that was it. And so, which was just a huge, you think like the one person in life that's going to love you for who you are is your spouse. And so that was a lot. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, like, all right, who am I as a woman? Who do I want to be? And it was really hard because, like I said, our kids were 4 and 4 months old. So I was exclusively breastfeeding.
Well,
So I
and
had to
you're in
now
the thick of postpartum.
be very
Like
thick of postpartum.
just kick you while you're down and tell you that
yeah.
he's not attracted to you. Well, I mean, we're not that attractive at post.
At 4 months postpartum. No, it was really hard because like you said, like that I was still doing middle of the night feedings. And then I had gone back to being a nurse. I'd gone back to work as being a nurse, working night shift. So my whole sleep schedule was off and I was in school getting my bachelor's program and I was in a big calling at church. And so I was so confused. I remember him telling me that night and I just took a couple seconds to be like, wait, I was just so confused. And I remember having to pass back and forth. We'll have to pass to him. I would pump and then hand him like frozen breast milk and be like, can you feed our, 4 or 5 month old child? Do you know about wake windows? Do you know about middle of the night feedings? Do you know about all of this? Like it was just such a hard thing for me to hand over everything that I had just taken care of, knowing that he was everything that he was just, or that I was taking care of and knowing he was having to do it. And I remember feeling so strongly, like I just prayed to the Lord, how am I supposed to like give up this much control? It was just so hard for me when it was my children, my like newborn baby and my special needs
Well,
child.
you're meaning
And
when the divorce is done and you're
like
had
in the very beginning when we were separated and the divorce, like the paperwork was being filed and I knew, he had moved out and the kids are now spending the night at his house. And
4 month old baby is spending the night at his house when you're
yeah, I think by the time we started, he was 6 months old, I think is when we started going back and forth. And so, yeah, it was
I
really hard. And can you imagine, like, I still fed him in the
can't
middle of the
imagine.
night.
I can't imagine because I'm dealing with something similar. My baby is going to be 3 tomorrow, but like it's like you're having
Mhm.
like you're a fish out of water and the kids are being ripped from you.
Ripped. Yeah. That's what it felt like.
Trusting that he's getting up, not sleeping through the crying, because let's be honest, like 6 months olds don't all sleep through the night. Mine never did.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think by that point he was like an angel baby. So I want to say he was, and that's why I agreed to it.
Mm.
And I still think he had some middle of the night things, because they go through growth spurts and all of a sudden they're up again and then all of that kind of a thing. It was just really hard. And I remember just praying about it and the Lord telling me, like, I will take care of them while they're over there, but I need you to create a safe space for them when they come home. And it was just this feeling of like, I am the only one that can give them a happy mom who loves life.
Yeah.
So when they come home and I'm constantly stressing about this and that, and what has your dad done over there? And all of this stuff. And I'm like, are your naps okay? And is he feeding you vegetables and all of that? Like, it's so much, it was all consuming to me that I was just an anxious mess all the time. So I just had to honestly like let it go and know that they are safe and taken care of, whether or not their naps are being being done like I want them to, or they're eating their vegetables at dinner. And I was just going to create a safe space for them. So I was going to make sure that I was in the best place so that when they came home, they felt safe. They felt like this is mom, you know, like this is a place I want to be.
But I do want to like you missed that control because I don't think because I'm dealing with the same thing. I don't think there's
Yeah.
anything wrong with worrying about their nap, with worrying whether
Oh no.
well, and I know you don't, but I'm like so many people are like they'll be fine, but it's
Yeah.
your children that were in your womb that
Yeah.
you birthed and nobody cares or loves for them like you do. It is hard to just be like take care of it. Hope you
No, I
you know
I
and
totally agree with that. And I think it was
how did
I
you do
think my stress and my anxiety, like I said, was all consuming. And I lost like an insane amount of weight and I couldn't sleep. And it was more of like, I need to be able to live my life with like peace. So I still worried and I still had conversations with him and I still asked, but it was just to where I wasn't like always feeling like I was gonna fall off a cliff because I was just so anxious. Does that make sense?
totally. Yeah, I mean
No? To
you had to
where
survive yourself emotionally.
yeah, I mean, I had to get through my day when they weren't there and different things like that. So we actually, fun twist to the story, we weren't even separated a year. So our divorce was finalized for a couple months and we actually got married again. That tends to shock people. Basically, he just had said I might have jumped the gun in wanting to get divorced and do you want to consider trying again? It's very interesting being asked out on a date by your ex-husband, by the way. Like you can add it to my life bingo card. Like, you know, never thought that would happen.
So how long after you were divorced did he do that?
4 or 5 months. I think it was like 10 and a half months, 11 months from when we originally separated to when we started dating again. So I know we got remarried like right before that year mark of our separation, but we were only married for 2 months.
The
I
second
think officially like 4 months, but we filed after 2 months because he was just like, I really tried and he just couldn't do it. So that
gosh.
was probably the most passionate prayer I've ever said in my life was that second time that he left. Because, okay, so from the first night he left to then the second night that he left was a 13-month period. So I prayed about it before we got married again. Like, all right, Heavenly Father, you know, he's wanting to try. And we were divorced, but we had kids together and all of that. So I was just like, all right. We were married in the temple. So our temple ceiling was still intact.
Families.
And my biggest thing when he left was that the first time was like he just left. He had been feeling a certain way for quite a few years that I was not aware of, and so my biggest thing was like, why didn't you tell me? Because we could have worked on it. Maybe not like I need to change who I am, but if you have needs that I'm not meeting, like let's talk about this. Like this is what you do in a marriage. And I was so frustrated that he just left without giving me the opportunity or the chance to work
Blindsided.
on it. Yeah, and so then when he came back the second time, I thought you're a year late, but this is what I wanted a year ago. So
You're gonna do it for your kids.
I'm gonna do it for my kids. And we really tried, and I really tried. And when he left, it really was that feeling of like, I did everything I could to save this marriage. So I truly was able to just put
Wash
it behind me and let it go. And I really was able to have peace with the whole thing. Like I did everything I possibly could to save that marriage. So I then met my current husband actually like fairly soon after that. I was a nurse at the time working night shift, and he was a fellow nurse. We didn't work on the same unit, different units. So then another nurse was like, you guys should go on a date. You're like the same person. And we knew each other by face and name, but nothing more than that. And normally I'm not one to date someone I work with, but when he asked me to dinner, I don't know, it just felt like there was such a pull. It was just like there was something I just couldn't say no. So, and then from that first date on, we were just inseparable. We just knew, I feel like, from that first date. So we were married December of 2017, and we have 2 kids together.
Wow.
Who are 4 and 3. And when our youngest was a month old, so we were married just over 3 years, he had a seizure at work and he was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer called glioblastoma.
I mean, there's no chance. They just straight up gave you like it's terminal. Like
Yeah, so with glioblastoma, there is no cure. There is a 5% survival rate at 5 years. So for the chance to even make it to 5 years, there's a 5% chance. So Tim, I call Tim, he's my current husband. I call him my meteor because he just came into my life at such a dark time. I was very comfortable with who I was. Now that I had put that divorce behind me and I knew like I'm confident in who I am, that was not my fault, like not that I didn't have fault in it, and I'm sure I could have done things better, but like I really tried and I was just loving who I was. And then Tim came in at this time, and I say that he just lit my world on fire. He lit me on fire. My first husband said he wasn't attracted to the kind of woman I was, and Tim, I feel like loved every part of who I was, like for exactly who I am. So it was just such a beautiful thing.
okay, so let's back up a little bit because
Yeah.
I know this is like like it's history and it's in the past, but like we just zoomed over like diagnosis and death. What was it like for you when he got this diagnosis? Like what did you just cry? I mean,
Oh, yeah. So when they called me, I remember I was at Walmart and it was February and I was going through the Valentine's clearance section, even though it was February 11th. So it's funny how your mind remembers certain
yes,
things.
where you
And
were.
yeah, where I was, and I had milk in my cart. I remember that. And she called and said, Tim had a seizure. And all kept saying to her was, Tim doesn't have seizures. And she kept saying, Amber, which it was a good work friend that I knew. She said, Amber, I know he doesn't, but he did. And I would be like, I think you have the wrong person. Tim doesn't have seizures. And she was like, I know that, but he did. So then when we officially had the
He was
diagnosis, I
taken
was,
to the hospital where you work.
yeah, so he worked at the hospital during the day at this point. A coworker had noticed that he was just kind of talking funny, so she had taken him down to the emergency department, and they were going to kind of have a doctor look at him on the side. And it was while she was down there, like, hey, can we get someone to come look at Tim? That he just went down. He started to have a seizure, and she pinned him against the wall, and they were able to get him into a bed. And so, yeah, it was just amazing timing that he was in the emergency department when it happened, and we cried, and we knew it was from that day that I knew you are going to die from this. Like, this is going to be what ultimately kills you. I had hoped and prayed for like 3, 5, 7 years. You know, we have a 1-month-old baby who I'm still up in the middle of the night doing feedings, and who we had just had 2 procedures for his tongue tie. And like, that was our biggest problem right now was his tongue tie and, different things like that. And we had a long conversation the night before. So this is February of 21. So COVID was still pretty high. And we had a conversation the night before about how he felt like he just worked too much. We had this newborn baby. It was our 4th child. And he was like, I just feel like I need to be home more. So we had talked about a potential career change within nursing still, but a different department that would let him be home more. And then it was the next day that he had a seizure. So I always joked with him. I said, when I wanted you home more, that's not what I meant. So we knew at that point, like, we truly just need to enjoy the time that we have. And we just prayed that we would have years. But like I said, it was June of 2022, 16 months that he ended up passing away, which the general time is between 12 and 18 months. So he was right on par.
Okay, so you basically got to watch him decline right in front of you.
Yeah. Tim was very smart. Oh, he was so smart, but he never made you feel inferior for how smart he was. He always just floated it into like, you didn't really know it until you really started talking to him. And then you're like, you're actually like really smart. And he was witty. He was so quick and so funny. And so that was really hard for me to watch, because immediately some of the things that started to go were his speech. He was still able to talk, but he could not think of the right word. And it was like his memory. And then like, he wasn't as quick on stuff. And then it was stuff like, he was just home. And so I would be like, we need to run these errands, but do you want to stop and get lunch? Where do you want to go? And that was too much of a decision between like errands and lunch. I'm like, this or that. If I gave him a this or that question, it was too much. He couldn't process the decision.
So it started to affect his cognitive ability.
Yeah, it did.
How was his passing? How did that go for you? What was that like?
It was tragic and beautiful at the same time. So we got a diagnosis early May in 2022 that his tumor had grown, and that they were going to stop the chemo that he was on, and they were going to try this last ditch effort with this other drug that wasn't even FDA approved. And I kind of knew like, this is the beginning of the end. And I, for some reason in my mind, thought like, okay, end of summer. Like, I've got like 2 months with him, maybe. Like, we kind of need to start wrapping things up. And so I decided to take him on a trip, just the 2 of us. My family was like, we've got the kids, you guys just go. We then had another trip planned that we were going to do with the kids, of just because he was still able to walk and talk and go to the bathroom by himself. Like, he was
So
just
this
kind of
tumor is only affecting him cognitively at the moment.
Yes. So this was the last week of May into the first week of June that we went to Colorado, and we had this small town in Colorado, and we just had an incredible time. Like, he was kind of confused, but also like, he had a lot of lucid moments, and we just rest and relaxed, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And we got home on a Saturday night, and I knew that Sunday he'd be in bed most of the day because we traveled a lot, and I knew it was just going to wipe him out. So Sunday he was in bed a lot, and I was just letting him rest. And then I realized about midday that his headache was just so bad, and I could not get it under control with the medicine we had at home. And then he's starting to throw up. And at that point, especially with a brain tumor, I'm like, I'm not doing this at home. You don't have the flu. I know what this is. So I took him into the emergency department. He started having seizures that night, and then he passed away the next day. It came so fast.
Did you get to see your kids then, at least when he came home?
He did. He saw them Saturday night and before he went to bed. And the part that's heartbreaking to me is my daughter, she was 3 at the time. She had missed us so much. She was still taking naps. And so I had laid her down for a nap and she didn't want to go down. She was just like, I miss you, but she still really needed it. And I was like, I will be here when you wake up. I promise. Like, I'm not going out of town anymore. I'm here. You've got me. I'm all yours. And then it was while she was asleep and my, at the time, 17-month-old was taking a nap that my husband got worse. And so while they were napping, I had called my mom and said, I have to take him in. I took him to the hospital and he died before they got a chance to see him.
Yeah. Maybe that was okay because they saw him when he came.
Yeah.
They knew they'll remember what he was like.
Yeah.
Instead of, those final moments when he probably wouldn't have been awake, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
The day he died, he just did not look like himself, his happy, jovial self that he was. And so I don't know if I even really wanted them to see him
Right.
like that. There's a bit of an age difference with us anyway. He's 12 years older than I am. And so then even with the cancer, he looked a lot older than what he really was.
Okay, so tell me, Amber, like to wrap this up, how did you get through that? First of all, two divorces from the same man,
Yeah.
postpartum with little babies and having to hand them over to him, remarrying the love of your life where you truly felt cherished.
Yeah.
And like, this is what marriage is, to losing him. Like, how have you gotten through that? What did you rely on? And what was how did you break through it?
But I don't remember if it was Elder Bednar or someone else that said like cancer is the disease of love. I am so grateful that for his cancer diagnosis because we had 16 months. I knew it was coming. I was able to we like shifted our priorities and I was able to love the heck out of him and I was able to prepare for you are going to die, like this isn't a cancer that you might pull out of. Like I know that this is going to take you. So that was one thing that I was really able to partner with the Lord and be like, all right, when he dies, like I need that support. And then I just think after he died, it was just the Lord, honestly, the atonement, the savior of just like, this hurts so bad. Like I just couldn't even explain the physical pain that it was. It hurts so bad. And I don't want to do this. Like that was a big prayer I had a lot was I just don't want to do this. I don't want to be that widow. I don't want to be that girl or that story that like, oh, she divorced her husband and then now she's a widow after this amazing man. But that is my story, that is my life. And it's been hard and it's been beautiful. I've had beautiful moments. And so I have truly just aligned my will with the Lord of like, what do you want me to do? And I don't feel like that's giving away my independence. And I don't feel like that's giving away my voice. It's just been like, I have a voice and how do you want me to use it? If that makes any sense. And it's just been so much of like, I know you can make my life greater than what it is, but I need you to help me also feel joy because right now this is just painful.
Is there any advice or anything, what would you tell someone else going through this? Like, what would you say to your younger self, knowing now what you know?
Oh gosh, I think two things come to my mind. The first one is that God gave us this mortal life, but he did not ask us to not feel mortal feelings. Like so many times when people think like, oh, just align your will with his or like trust in God, that means that you can't feel sadness or anger or depression or anxiety or upset. Like that was one thing where I'm like, no, like this still really hurts, even though I have faith in the Lord. And am I not allowed to feel upset because I have that trust in him? I think 100% he allows you to feel mad and angry and sad about your situation because this is so hard.
Yeah.
This mortal life is so hard,
Yeah.
but it's what we do in those moments that we turn to the Lord instead of turning away from the Lord. I think that's one thing that just give myself grace to feel what it is I'm feeling. I'm sad. I'm really sad, and I've been times where I was so angry, whether it was divorce or death, that I was like, I do not like this, Heavenly Father, and I need you to know that, And then the second thing is that it will get better. And that's something I tell myself daily right now. It doesn't feel like it, but there is something out there that is just so incredible for you that you just don't even know. Like the Lord will just has so many things in store for you that you just don't even know. I think back on my Tim, like I remember divorcing my first husband thinking I'll never love a man the way I loved him. And then I found my husband and I'm like, oh, I don't even think I knew what love was that first time around,
Oh, that brings a lot of other women hope. I've had a lot of women reach out to me about their marriages ending, and I don't know what to tell them. I mean, I'm dealing
Yeah.
with thick of it myself, and you feel like all hope is lost. And like
Yeah.
again, I feel like Buttercup on Princess Bride. I will never love again.
It's true. It's true. Even I feel that way now. I'm like, I don't know. I have a lot of history. Who wants to come take this on? But but I promise you, like there is something out there for you. The Lord, the waiting is the hardest part, but there can be such beauty in the waiting. And the Lord just he just sees how wonderful you are, and he just has this beautiful package for you. It
Oh,
might take some time, but it's there.
I love that, and he'll consecrate all of it for our good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amber, thank you so much. The listeners are really gonna be inspired by you, so thank you for coming on.